Hello, everybody. I'm Howard Friedman. I'm the director of the Jewish Community Library in San Francisco, and I'm really glad to welcome all of you to this event on the novel Dog, published this past October by Sankata Press. Please note that automated closed captioning can be turned on or off by clicking the CC button that's at the bottom of your screen. I am so happy that through the miracle of technology, we have Yishay Ishi Ron, the author of Dog, joining us from his home in Tel Aviv. And he'll be joined by Yardenne Greenspan, the book's translator, joining us from New York. She's one of the most accomplished Hebrew translators working today. Her translations include some of the most important works of recent Israeli literature, including books by Yishai Sarid, Yochi Brandes, Shimon Adaf, and Shem Mizrahian, as well as the great anthologies Tel Aviv Noir and West Jerusalem Noir. I'm going to be asking questions of both Yishai and Yarden, and then we'll have opportunities to take questions from all of you. And so please, everybody, know that you will be muted, but you will have the opportunity to ask questions through Zoom's chat function. So you can put your questions in the chat, and then I'll relay them to Yishai and Yarden, time permitting. And so I'm going to begin by asking Yishai. First of all, thanks for being with us. So, and I know that a number of the people here have read the novel, but most probably have not. So I wonder if you can offer a description of the novel, and avoiding any spoilers.
Sure. So first of all, thank you, Howard, and thanks everyone that joined us today. It's a great pleasure to be your guest. And also, I want to thank the Jewish Book Council for organizing those things, and Sankata Press, and Yarden, my translator. Thank you very much for being with me. Okay, so we are talking about Dog. Dog is a book which tells the story of Golani officer that returns from Gaza, and not the last war, but an operation of Pillar of Defense. And he feels that everything is good in life. Everything is going for him. He's a student. He has a work. He's good looking. He just returned from Japan, and suddenly everything collapsed in one day when post-trauma hits him very, very strongly. And he cannot really have a dissociations between Tel Aviv and Gaza. And those symptoms of PTSD takes him to a journey of using drugs, which it's a way of self-medicating. And during this experience, he gets to use more and more and stronger drugs until he finds himself on the street shooting heroin, living in a dump in Tel Aviv. This is basically how the story starts. Another protagonist of the book and is very important. It's the dog, and that's and you can know, you understand it's important because the book is called Dog. I have two protagonists, two dogs in the book. One is the dog from Gaza. The dog from Gaza is actually more of a symbol. It's a way that Geller, my protagonist, could handle. Is not handling, but in order to be a little balanced, he remembers that he can handle all his bad memories from killing people and watching his friends burned in front of him, and all those horrific things he saw and did in Gaza. And he can handle this by remembering one very horrible incident of what he's remember, a teammate of him shooting an innocent dog in Gaza. And for him, it's like a very intense incident. And, and that's what he puts all his memories into this, because a dog is not a human being, but it's still someone who's very close to us as people. And the main character, the main protagonist dog, is the dog in Tel Aviv, which finds Geller in his dump, and he carries his own PTSD. The book, most of the characters are PTSD because this is the lineup of the story, and actually it's the lineup of my story, okay, of my own autobiography, which we will talk a bit later. But so this is basically the book. I don't want to make spoiler, but there is kind of a very dramatic development that helps Geller get some kind of redemption or a hope for redemption. Um, and without making any spoilers, it's also the book is much dramatic and like intense, like some um, um, like a book that you really read and cannot get out of your hands. But it's also very uh, touchable book, meaning it touches your heart because it touches all the characters in their lowest places, and the PTSD, which we will talk about a bit later, is a very dramatic injury that happens to someone in his life, and not necessarily only to veterans.
Thank you so much. Yardenne, maybe if I could ask you, what appealed to you about Dog as you embarked on translating it?
Well, first of all, it's just a really well written book. It's a pleasure to read and it's a pleasure to translate. It flows off the page and it made my work that much easier. And I think the other thing, two things really, that really spoke to me about the book. First of all, it has so much heart. It is overflowing with empathy and care and with pain, but it's a pain that has a hope of healing to it. And I thought in this weird, difficult, complicated time we live in, that's exactly how I want to feel. And I'm always very interested in stories that are honest. And I think the way this book portrays warfare and how ugly it gets and how nuanced it is, and how it can't fit into a neat box of good versus evil was something that I really appreciated.
Oh, thank you very much. So, Yishai, so I guess maybe if you could talk about the narration of it and how you entered the voice. I mean, most of it is in the first person, and how you entered that person's voice and how you decided on that perspective.
Mhm. So I say that a dog is not an autobiography, but it's a mental autobiography. Okay, it's like I wasn't an officer. I was a soldier in a special unit in the army, and I've seen and did a lot of things which are at the time I was into it. I didn't understand what mentally which processes I'm doing. You know, I'm going. I shot a friend during an operation, and I saw a lot of people get killed. And as a young boy, it's like really 18, 19 years old, you are very eager to participate in your unit. But afterward, and you know, my subconscious uh, led me to the place of start to drink and use drugs all the time in order not to remember things that I did and so. And like my protagonist Geller, I had the same kind of movement, meaning for many years I was basically stoned 24/7. I did, of course, I didn't get it to such a drastic situation like shooting heroin, but I wasn't far from it. I mean, I was basically taking all the drugs I could, And even later, when I got married and started studying psychology, it was all through drugs. And all the time I was feeling that that something is not correct, is not good. But I was very I always said I'm not PTSD from the army. My wife said, "Listen, Ishi, you beat me up from sleep, you shout, you wake up." I started to add anxieties a few years after my release, and those anxieties developed through years to panic attacks. And I had all the symptoms, or most of the symptoms of the classic PTSD, but I didn't recognize it. I started writing dogs before I acknowledged my PTSD, which is kind of strange, like the author in me knew that he's PTSD before I did. Um, but it was just another novel. I wrote a few novels. One was published in Israel in Hebrew, and two children books were published in Israel, and I wrote many other novels which haven't been published yet. And Dog was, I felt that it's special, but I was very into writing and not publishing. And I had my work and my growing my kids. And one time during COVID, my teammates did a gathering, and it was very exciting to meet everyone after 30 years. But I also met the guy I shot. And I also discussed, we sat and we drank and we discussed about incidents. And I came home, and it was like suddenly after a few days I got wrecked. I was broken to million pieces. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I had continuous anxiety attacks for weeks and months. And then it's the only time I acknowledge my PTSD. It's for the first time I understood that I couldn't hide it from myself anymore. So, and it brings us to this very important issue of embarrassing. Why so many veterans, and not only veterans, people with PTSD, take their own life. It's very common in the US for veterans. It's common in Israel, with so many soldiers killed themselves since October 7th, and so many civilians also carrying PTSD commit suicide because people cannot admit it. They cannot handle the personality change, that suddenly they look in the mirror and they see someone that is suffering so much, and a minute before it erupted, it was normal. So I think many people, especially men, guys, soldiers, are very hard for them to admit this PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, which they percept as weakness, and they cannot be weak because they are guys and they are soldiers. Anyway, my psychiatrist told me, listen, you have to work on this book. It will help you to process all your stuff. And and at the time I couldn't really work and I couldn't really function well. So it was amazing that I could write, I could edit, I can do whatever I wanted with literature. And so I did. So I started working very hard on Dog, which was really helped me to process my injury. And when Dog came out, it became some kind of a cult book in Israel. And it became it was a bestseller. It reached the Sapir long list, which is very prestige place for a book in Israel. And a lot of people start to come over to my house to get signature, to get sign their books, but they actually wanted to talk about the trauma. And my wife, it always makes us laugh to remember. She said, "Listen, Ishi, it's like a never-ending shiva. All the time, people coming to the house and telling us such a dramatic and sad and amazing stories, and it's sometimes it was too much to get on your shoulders so many hard and difficult, experiences from people that carried PTSD, or their children in the army carried it, and they came to talk with me about it. So this is about how dog was aligned with my experiences, and this is why it looks as it became so authentic, I think, and this is what people tells me that when they read it, they really feel the authentication of the experiences of the PTSD and the drug use, the addiction, and all those stuff.
That's really extraordinary. Thank you for sharing that. And I have to say I'm just appreciative of how upfront you've been about that, about how your own struggles have informed your writing, and I think it's very important
It,
that we sort of transcend this culture of denial, especially for men. And I'm curious if sort of when to what degree do you feel in sort of digging deep into the meaning of PTSD, both in your own life and as you see it enacted in the lives of others? Um, what is your why do you think there is such a culture of suppression of where people are unable
Mhm.
to confront their what's going on in their minds?
First of all, I want to say before I will answer this question, I want to say that it's for me, it's a kind of a mission when I release Dog to the public, and with the amazing talent of Yardenne, which is really a brilliant translator and an amazing person by herself. Bring it to a global audience. So for me, it's a chance really to put the light on this such an important subject, which today is so common all over the world, and of course in countries like Israel, which are submitted to so many wars and crazy situation, which you wake up in the morning to a terrorist attack, in the afternoon something in the north, and at night a new war breaks. It's crazy. And after the 7th of October, we feel that generally that most of the countries PTSD in a way, and sometimes even Jews all over the world in the diaspora, there are also somehow PTSD from what happened to us as Jews, as Israelis. And I think it is so this subject is very, very important because there's so many injuries now that I don't see how the government can even handle such big quantities, and it's only the beginning before the big waves of October 7th and after the war that will erupt with so many people. I think that people are easy as- to to be ashamed about PTSD because society for years treated it as cowardness or weakness, and sometimes admitted it's also uh, having to deal with it, dealing with flashback, processing it. So for males, soldiers especially, or for males that were sexually attacked, it's really an issue of embarrassment, I think. And it's very common to be ashamed and to be embarrassed of weakness for men. And it's happening a lot. And people that were officers in the army or special unit or you know, any soldiers that were fighting suddenly to feel this weakness, and it's an unseen injury. And you are not returning home without an arm, and you are decorated for losing your arm and being a decorated, handicapped warrior, fighter. Here you come home with an injury that is unseen. In the past, many people say, oh, they are just saying they couldn't see. But actually, it's today, the Ministry of Defense and the Army acknowledge that it's the worst kind of injury, and it's the most common one. And actually, handicapped PTSD in Israel, PTSD handicapped lives 5 years less by average than all other handicapped in the army, from the army. It's amazing. And I think also for not for soldiers, but also for women, admitting that they were sexually assaulted, it's puts them sometimes in weak places in front of society, especially from homes which are not very liberal, more religious, or uh, it's a very PTSD. It's a very hard injury, very difficult to handle it alone, and people really need to know that they have to ask for help. If they will not, it can be deteriorate and can cause, to be worse and worse.
Thanks. I really appreciate you expressing that so clearly and forcefully
Thank
and being
you.
such an advocate. Yardenne, if I could ask you about some of your experience translating the book, particularly, were there any particular challenges that you experienced, any of the kind of phrasing or the voices of the characters that if you can just sort of talk a little about your experience.
Sure. Well, there's the challenge that always exists in translating, but it felt especially prominent with this one, which is bringing a voice that is very uniquely Israeli into the English language while preserving its unique Israeli flavor. So that includes slang, it includes military jargon, it includes the sort of little nuances of the way people speak to each other. Because this book is very casual in tone, meaning it's a lot of dialogue, a lot of it between people in the lowest points of their lives. Um, there was no room for any flowery language. It's all very direct. At the same time, because the narrator is a drug user suffering of PTSD and going through some episodes of dissociation, um, I noticed as I was working that the language was very aggressive, meaning not that the character itself was aggressive, but that the way he perceived the world was. He perceived the world as an aggressor against him. And so a lot of the language, any natural occurrence like the sun shining or the rain falling, was described with words that implied an assault. And that was something that I had to make sure to preserve and not lose sight of, as sometimes happens when you're trying to translate a sentence in a way that sounds most natural and easy. You always have to pay attention to those little kinks and nuances that make a story unique. I think also, for me personally, I was working on this book. I don't remember exactly when I started translating, but it was only a few months after October 7th. And I was very sensitive at the time to the way people perceived Israel and Israelis and the IDF. And I mentioned before, I appreciate books that tell the truth, and that's always been true for me. But at the same time, it is a little bit scary to put the truth out there, knowing that there are so many people just waiting to twist it around. And so for me, on an emotional level, that was a challenge that I felt that it was important to overcome because I think the only way to get to a healthier place as a society is just to be honest and not to try to um, paint over thing with rosier tones.
Yeah, I appreciate that. When you talk about maintaining keeping the specifically Israeli voice, um, is it possible for you to sort of detail that a little? Just
Sure. I mean, I think Israelis are notoriously very direct. Some might say rude. I say personal, you know. There's less, um, there's not that very many mannerisms of politeness. It's just very much say what you mean, speak to everyone at eye level. There's a gruffness that I think when you're familiar with it is not you no longer perceive it as anything negative. You just perceive it as the way people go through the world. It's a difficult place to live, and so it requires a level of it requires a thick skin, I guess is what I'm trying to say. At the same time, Israel is a country of immigrants. In this book, we have an immigrant from the former USSR. We have people of Mizrahi heritage. Everyone has their little nuances in the way they speak, the slang they use, the foreign words that they bring into their speech. And to paint an accurate picture of Israeli society means bringing in all of these elements.
Thank you. So, and I guess a question I have for in terms of your own philosophy as a translator is how much freedom you feel when you're making those decisions in terms of when you have the text and you think an American, say, would understand it better with with a different turn of phrase or with how much leeway or how do you sort of balance the faithfulness to the original text to how much an audience is going to understand the sentiment?
The way I always present it to my authors ahead of time when we do a kind of introductory conversation before I start working on a book is that my loyalty lies with the book, not with the author. In other words, if I feel that an author's word choice works beautifully in Hebrew, but in English will completely lose its meaning, I will change it. And if the author insists, I will try to find an alternative that they're happier with, but I will not stick to whatever it is that they originally wrote if it just doesn't mean anything to an English reader. I'm not interested in transforming books to sound as if they were originally written in English necessarily. I want it to be natural and flowing as if it had been written in English, but I don't need it to be Americanized or Britishized or whatever. It's fine for it to sound a little bit different. It's fine if occasionally there's a biblical reference that reminds you where this is happening, reminds you that this is happening in a country where the language people use every day is steeped in biblical references. Um, I will definitely change grammar, jokes, slang, turns of phrase in order to bring the meaning across in a way that's clear. Um, the metaphor I use, which is kind of disgusting, I've been told, is I try to imagine like I'm wearing the author's skin. So I sit at my computer and I think, okay, if Yishai was writing this book in English, if English was his native tongue and he was writing this book in English, what would he write? And the result is often different than what the Hebrew than the way the Hebrew came out. But hopefully, whatever element is most central to the text, whether it's the tone or attention to detail or voice, it will come across.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that very much. And and I have to just say, just as long as I have you here, this is off topic and stuff, but as a librarian, I have to say I just wanted to take the opportunity to express my appreciation. Your work is just so good, and it's so important for those of us who are dependent on English translations of Hebrew works. This it's really only a handful of translators who are responsible for the vast majority of recent Israeli literature being translated into English, and you've just done great, such great work over
Thank
the
you
past
so much.
decades.
It's
So.
so wonderful to hear that because I mean, yes, it is only a handful of translators, and sadly, it's also not a huge audience of readers. But I know that for the people who do read works in translation, that stuff means something. You know, it's meaningful to have it available, and it's really meaningful to me to hear that the work can leave a mark.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Ishi, if I go back to you to what I'd like to ask about is we've talked about you talked about PTSD, and in addition to chronicling this former soldier's experience of PTSD, the novel also shows the way that homeless people and those with drug addictions live as largely as social outcasts. And in the case of Geller, he even chooses to isolate himself from his family because really he wants to save his mother the pain of seeing him in his current state. Can you talk about that process for you of portraying these characters who are on the margins of society?
Yes, I think that when I started to write the book and I started to research, first of all, deep in my soul, in my heart, and second, later, I also interviewed and talked with drug addicts and all sort of people that live as outcasts in our societies. Uh, I started to understand more emotionally than logically those people. And I talked with people. It was usually happened online, and I started to have those connections with people, which I suddenly saw that it's amazing that the only thing they wanted from someone who started to have some kind of connection with them is just tell the story. They were eager to spill their gut and tell their own story. And I understood that people just don't see them. And then every one of us can understand this thing because every one of us lives in or go through the big cities in our countries and see those beggars and see the prostitutes in the corners of the streets, and sometimes they are approaching us in our cars and ask for money, and so many people just close urgently the window, not because they are afraid, because it's disgust them, you know. We really, let's admit it. It's disgust us to see those people that lay sometimes in their vomit or in their smelling clothes. And I found myself after talking with those people and after writing dog and processing all those elements which I met, I found myself a lot of the time approaching those people in the street and asking them if they need something, or to call the social services and not to call the police, or if they are entering a shop and they don't have enough money to buy them something. And I think this is what I want people to understand, to feel in their hearts when they finish to read Dog. Okay, they will feel probably lots of things. They will feel and understand the PTSD and family connections and after war, what happens after the war ends, and people are left with injuries that sometimes cannot be seen. But I want them also to carry this tikkun olam, as we say, the small thing that if you smile to this person, or you give a warm meal or something to drink to that person, you can change the world. If all of us would be a little nicer to those people, because those people in those weak places in society are really transparent. They are really people that lost all hope, and they are there because of trauma. None of us is dreaming of becoming a beggar in the street, or a bum that lives in like in a dump, or a drug addict or a prostitute. It seems that life situations and life episodes and families, broken families and injuries that brings those people to this place, and it's not their fault a lot of the time or most of the time. And I think all of us, if we look around, you can see that all of us are some kind of mentally disordered or PTSD in many kind of a way. You know, one is losing a child, one is having his mom die in his hands because she has cancer. All of us are experiencing really bad situation in life, and sometimes some of us, like me, are more sensitive and will be injured from this. You know, today I can tell you that, you know, before there were times that I was thinking that, oh, why I had to be so sensitive in to be PTSD, you know, to suffer from, you know, what my teammates, not all of them, some of them are PTSD, but some of them, you know, continued with their life. And then I understood that I should look at the advantages of being sensitive and, you know, being injured from this, because then you can sense maybe society and other people in a greater volume. And it is very important.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. So I'm going to go ahead and open to questions. I have quite a few myself, so I'm happy to return to my own. But I want to make sure that anybody in the audience with questions has the opportunity to have them answered. And I have a few to begin with. So please put your questions in the chat. From Susan Cohen Grossman, the question for you, Ishi, did you consult with any medical professionals about PTSD?
I guess she means, or you mean, dear, about when I wrote Dog.
Yes.
Yes. So when I wrote after I wrote Dog, I was treated with so many medical experts on myself. So, you know, I'm practically a very expert person in PTSD. I've tried almost any treatment there is, any psychology treatment, EMDR and processing and whatever you want. And of course, many medication. But when I wrote Dog, it was before I acknowledged my disease or my injury. And of course, I didn't talk with experts, but I was reading a lot. I read whatever I could. I read research. I read um, a lot of stuff in the that exists online. Today, it's much easier than decades ago when an author had to go only to the library and read whole books. Today, you can go and really gets to enormous to sources which are exist online. So of course, I read a lot, and and of course, I sensed a lot, which is, I think, most important.
Great. Well, thank you. So you have a question from Judah Rosenwald asking, can Yardenne share one or two specific examples of a translation challenge from Hebrew to English?
Oh, sure. Um, so the examples from this book that come to mind all have to do with the dump, which is the place where the protagonist spends his time. It's an abandoned building that was taken over by drug users. Um, and the characters he meets there, a few things came up as I was working. There's two main characters. There's two main characters in the dump that the protagonist interacts with. One is in the Hebrew, he was called a Kavkazi, meaning from the Caucasus region of Europe. But the Caucasian sounded pretty silly and nonsensical when translated into English. And so we changed it into the Georgian. We just chose, a different region within the same area. But more importantly, the dialogue between the characters there. The Georgian, beyond the fact that he drops a lot of Russian into his speech, he's also just very crude and very aggressive. On the other hand, we have Krachi Tzvi, who's a former teacher and is kind of sort of like a blast from the past. He's like an old-fashioned nerd who took some wrong turns in life and ended up disabled, addicted to drugs, and unhoused. The way he speaks is a lot more flowery, but also very whimsical. There's a lot of little jokes. Like it always sounds like he's kind of poking you with his elbow, kind of trying to amuse you, even when he's in the lowest places. And so I found that striking the right balance of allowing these characters to be symbolic in some ways while also keeping them real and not turning them into stereotypes. That was a big challenge I faced as I worked on the book. You want people to see them as real and have empathy for them. And at the same time, you want them to serve whatever textual purpose they have, sort of like an angel and a demon on the protagonist's shoulders.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Ishi Cantor Shivers asks whether you have a dog now.
I had a dog up to 3 weeks ago. For 16 years, we raised her, and unfortunately, but this is life. She was 16 and she suffered so much in the last days of her life, so we just had to put her to sleep. But yes, we raised her for and all my childhood I raised a lot of dogs. I mean, my family, we were living um, in a private home, like on the ground, and we raised usually 4 or 5 dogs in the yard, in the house. So it was very natural for me to sense those animals, to understand how they approach humans only for empathy and for hugs and for attention. And they will prefer it even over food and water, which is it's crazy and amazing. So I had this I had my ways with dogs, yes.
I'm very sorry about your family's loss. That's,
hmm Thank you.
um, uh, so Lynn Davidson asks whether dog has been used by doctors as a type of reading therapy in any PTSD program, noting that it should be.
I heard uh, more than once, and I was approached by more than one professional which told me they are using uh, dog as an instrument. I have psychologists from the U.S. Actually few that said that they were passing it through their community of therapists to read. And I know that in Israel it was much common with it is much common with therapists. I know that also the Israeli National Library announced a few months ago that dog was one of the best novels written about PTSD in Hebrew literature. So yes, for the question.
Right. Thank you.
Mhm.
Um, and so I do want to ask if anybody, oh, I have a question. So how did from the audience, how did your family react to the novel, your parents, wife, and kids?
Yeah, my father passed away before it was published, and my kids, my close family was when Dog came out. Actually, I was very deep into the PTSD myself, so it is something which they already started to understand more clearly of it. It helped them to understand more of my situation. Uh, Being a PTSD survivor or someone that deals with this injury is not only something he deals with himself, it's something which the whole family is into it. And when I broke down, my wife opened a WhatsApp group with my kids, and they discuss it, and she told them what is happening, and they ask her sometimes things they were too embarrassed or didn't want to be directly to ask me, so they ask her. But you know, today the Ministry of Defense in Israel is having this a whole, not holistic in a matter of like, but holistic in a matter of like the whole family is involved when in the PTSD. So when you have a soldier who is taken care by professional from the IDF, so usually his whole family is under treatments. My wife and my mom can have a psychologist until the rest of their life from the army, and my sons would have it until they're 30 to deal with. So it's a whole thing, a whole family thing, and it is very important because as a PTSD, many times you feel that you are lonely in yourself, inside your mind. Even if you have a family, even if you have friends, even if you have, because the PTSD is such a dramatic injury and challenging, and it has a manifestation so wide from um, panic attacks and anxiety attacks and depression and disassociation, which is crazy because sometimes you can just during your drive suddenly you forget or you don't know where you are, or you are very easily can be ignited by an assault someone. Um, because as Yardenne so wonderful said before, that the language was of the book was a language of that everything. Geller feels that everything is assaulted him, even the weather, and this is how a PTSD sometimes feels. If someone is saying a word, you can, you know, you can just not be yourself in a second. You can, and later you will not remember exactly what happened. And so, yeah, so it's a family issue. It's not only the person who suffers from PTSD.
Thank you. Linda Ditmore asks whether you can talk, Ishi, a little bit more about Doris, who functions sort of after the betrayal. Well, you can talk
Hmm.
about her character.
Doris is an amazing character. I love her a lot, really. I got to be connected to her very much during my during our time together when I wrote her and she wrote me a little bit. Um, she was an important character to get in to touch Geller. Geller was feeling so alone, and although we meet Dog, but I wanted to have someone from society that is not afraid of those transparent people that lives in the edge of society, on the streets, the drug addict, the dirty people that smelling and not take showers. And Doris, because she's PTSD herself, and because she's a hardworking woman that survived in the south part of the city, uh, she accept Geller not only as he is, but she's accept him with she really accept him. She's not just wants to help him or doing it because he's young and good looking and was an officer in the army. She doesn't know those things when she approached him. She seems as one of her people, and this is what's so beautiful because she is not gone all the way to live on the street, and she has an apartment, she has a work, and she is managing her life. But because she deals with PTSD herself and with losing people and with losing her son, uh, those people like Geller are not like something special that she'll be afraid of. And it's really sweet and adorable to see a connection between uh, Doris and Geller as if it's the most natural thing to do. And suddenly you understand that really you can approach those people. They are not monsters. Each and every one of them has a story. And this is why it was important for me to have Doris in this story.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Cantor Shivers asks, what is the Hebrew name of the book?
Kelev, dog, exactly like in English.
Great. Those are the questions we have from the audience. If anybody has another one, you can put them in right now. I want to ask both of you, I know that both of you have had a subsequent collaboration, and maybe you could talk about that.
Yeah, maybe Yarden can tell this side I will have a sip of water.
Sure. We recently finished work on Ishi's next book to be published in English, also by Sankara Press. The book is called The Girl Who Rode the White Lion, and it's a very different animal. It's uh, it's a story that moves back and forth in time between World War II, where a Jewish girl escaping the SS finds refuge in a circus and learns to live with the circus performers and connect with the circus animals. And then the other part of the story takes place in America in the 1950s, where a veterinarian finds a Nazi ring within the bowels of a lion and goes on an adventure to find out the origins of the ring. And the two stories connect. It moves through time. It's a historical novel and also, to a great extent, a thriller. It much like Dog, it flows off the page. It's a really sweeping read that you can't put down. Um, and also, much like Dog, it does a great job of capturing the nuances of human behavior. In this case, that includes the extremely evil, as well as, the nicer, kinder, softer parts of humanity.
Thank you. Ishi, do you want to add anything to that?
No, that Yarden did an amazing work. And really, it's amazing to work with Yarden. She's a brilliant translator, and I'm very excited for The Girl Who Rode the White Lion. It will be published in August in this year in August, so maybe we can have another meeting then. And I'm also excited for Dog being transformed into a feature film in Israel by the talented director Eran Riklis. If you heard about him, he did a lot of the famous Israeli movies which filmed overseas, like The Syrian Bride, and now he is running with reading Lolita in Tehran, which is doing amazing in Europe and will be soon hit the US. And so he bought Dog, and he already finished the manuscript, and we are. I'm not working on it personally. He is, but it's very exciting that Dog will be seen on the big screen. And I'm also very excited for the new novel, which I hope will hit will make some waves. I'm trying the truth is I hope in some way to break through the only Jewish circle in the international thing, because for us today, for Israel, it's not easy. Breaking this circle. It's easy to be accepted among Jewish communities, and it's wonderful and it's amazing experience to meet with communities all over the world, and a lot in the US and in Canada. But also to succeed out of the Jewish circle is also something which I aspire to, and it's not very easy today, with the climate, the global climate. But hopefully it will happen.
Yeah, first of all, kol hakavod, the
Mhm.
adaptation by that's very exciting. I did not know about that.
Mhm.
Um, and maybe Yarden, could you maybe talk also add on to what he just said in terms of your own experience about the reception right now of specifically books by Israeli writers and outside the country and what that environment looks like right now in
The
your
truth is, I'm still figuring it out. I mean, I've been hearing a lot from agents in Israel about relationships that they've fostered for years with publishers around the world who now won't return their emails. We've all seen the long lists of authors pledging never to publish in Israel, never to work with Israeli institutions. Um, I myself have come across different literary magazines that have added no Zionism to their list of no-nos, no homophobia, no racism, no Zionism. Um, to a great extent, that exclusion of Israeli voices has taken hold. At the same time, Eli Sharabi's book Hostage made the New York Times bestselling list. There seems to be an appetite for Israeli stories for nuance, and so I think it kind of depends. My theory right now, and I don't know if it's correct, is that the highly literary are leaning into the sort of cool political position of being anti-Israel, but that readers at large, normal people around the world, don't want to take sides in such an extreme way. They're just interested in understanding what's going on, and they have empathy for people, whoever they are. And so I definitely think the trend right now is against us. I can tell you that I still have work uh, coming to me, but it's not always clear what the publishing side is going to look like. I'm just hopeful that with time, people forget about who they're supposed to love and who they're supposed to hate, and just start focusing again on stories.
Can you hear that sound? Thank you both so much for being here with us. I really appreciate it and learned so much from both of you. And thanks to all of you for being with us. Is there anything, either Yarden or Ishi, that you want to leave us with?
Just gratitude.
Uh, Dan first.
Yeah, no, just gratitude. Just thanks for inviting us, and happy to be here.
Uh, Same with me, really. Thank you. Thanks to everyone. I'm grateful to be to that people can hear my story and to get to know Doug. And I hope by my next novel also, it would be amazing if our audience can follow us Yardenne and mine, social networks, and I hope that you buy Dog and that you recommend it to your friends, because I think it's more than just a book, which I hope you'll think is good. I think it's a really some kind of a kaleidoscope into a soul of an injured person, and you will get out with a lot of ideas and feelings out of reading it. So this is my hopes, and
If
thank
I
you
if I can
really.
add to that, it's a healing tool as well as a book. Anyone in your life who's going through something, who's suffering right now, and feels like they're the only person in the world enduring whatever it is that's happening to them, this book will make them feel less alone. I'm saying this from so many notes that I've gotten from people who are dealing with different kinds of pain, and I know Ishi has had the same experience with readers. If someone in your life is hurting, get them this book.
And
Thank
thank you,
you.
Howard.
All right. Well, thank you both so much.
Thank
And
you.
all right, have a good day, everybody. Be well.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.